Oli Marmol. Oli, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great here. What are you laughing
What are you
for,
laughing?
Jim?
You
He just texted me that we called too early and he's angry about it. See, the thing is, Ollie likes to torture me. That's the truth.
Good, torture
Do
him.
you, Oli?
Well, you said you were going to call me at 9:30. You called at 9:28, and that's 2 minutes I don't get back, Jim.
He also one time got mad when I reminded of something that we were going to do, a pre-planned interview. And I just give him like a reminder. He's like, I'm not going to do it now because it's insulting that you think I need a reminder.
Oh.
Well, yeah, you texted me at like 8:30 and said, hey, friendly reminder, we got an interview. Like, I'm not 6, you know?
See, I'm wondering because maybe I'm wrong here. I feel like Oli, he knows how to use technology. You probably have a reminder or a spreadsheet or something in your calendar on your phone to remind you, right?
Yes, this isn't the only one I do a year, you know? So, like, Jim feels like he has to text me and remind me, like, hey, we're on in an hour, we're on in 30 minutes, we're on in 2 minutes. Like, I appreciate you, Jim, sometimes.
Well, it turned green whenever he texts you, so he was kind of freaking out a little bit. And we thought that maybe you're on an airplane
No,
or
I
something.
wasn't really just pointing out that I actually asked Tyler, and you know Tyler Ollie. I said, you know, we've been talking about having Ollie on, and if he doesn't come on, would you consider that a failure on my part? And Tyler said yes. So I was. Before we get to some baseball questions, I got to ask you a question about leadership. And you know, you've been around baseball a long time, many different roles. So on the show is Charlie Marlowe, formerly at Channel 2. I'm sure you'd know him. Cam Jansen, former Blue, and myself. And Cam usually runs point, meaning he takes us in and out of breaks.
Don't
right?
do this.
I shouldn't do it?
Don't do
on.
this. Jeez.
I told you I was going to ask Ollie about
Go
it. I
ahead.
thought you were fine with it. But you got Cam so rattled that he asked Charlie to bring us back because you're a baseball guy. He's a hockey guy. He's a little nervous about it.
Oh, no. I'm not a hockey guy, although I am going to stay in St. Louis this offseason. I want to catch some games to kind of experience it and get into it. But we can talk about whatever you guys want.
Well, the reason why I was nervous because I kind of screwed up a couple other guys that were pretty big dogs, and I just didn't want to mess this one up for respect. But hey, so you're staying in St. Louis? You got a place in Florida, and what do? Do you try to get away? Are you watching these playoffs? Do you try to get away from baseball? Like, what do you got going?
No, I don't mind watching it. I mean, it's a constant reminder that we didn't reach our goal. But no, I still turn the games on, and I like just the overall competition and seeing how it's going, who's winning, who's losing, who's going home, who's advancing, and why. But no, I don't unplug just yet. Once it's all wrapped up, then I will. But no, at the moment, I'm still catching games.
So, Oli, before we get to Cardinals-specific questions, you said who's advancing and why. And I think a lot of people are talking about that with the randomness of the best 2 of 3. And then you look at the American League, it's been pretty much chalk, obviously, Astros and Yankees. But the National League, you had some of the lower seeds. So why do you think some teams are advancing? Is it pretty random? Are there any specifics to how you play baseball you think that allows some teams to advance and others not? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it has to do with specifics on how they play as much as just the randomness of the playoffs and getting hot at the right time and having some 1-2 punches in your starting rotation that shuts guys down. And you look at the teams that are in there, and the Padres got hot at the right time. The Phillies were getting hot at the right time. And when you get into these short series, anything could happen. And I mean, we saw teams like the Braves. If you ask me, best team we played this year, it wasn't the Mets. It wasn't the Dodgers. It was the Braves. I thought they were a very, very well put together team, a very well managed team, and all those teams are out. And it comes down to getting hot at the right time.
And you guys kind of went through that too. The middle of your batting order, not hot at the wrong time. So when you look back at, you know, getting bounced early from the postseason, you know, you look at the Helsley thing, you look at guys not hitting, short series, anything can happen. What do you focus on when you look at that and you kind of rethink it in your mind?
Yeah, the only reason we were in a position where we won the division is because those 2 guys, I mean, were red hot all year, right? So to sit here at the end of the day and say, gosh darn, they got cold and we got bumped out early because of that. That's completely unfair. Those guys were nails for us all year on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. And at the end of the day, as a whole, we went. You look at that whole month leading into the playoffs, and that we were struggling scoring runs and putting together quality at bats and just stringing it together like we did in August. So it just led into that 2-game set, and unfortunately, we couldn't score enough runs to do it.
And Oli, that game 2, you guys had some opportunities, but Nola also kind of went out there and just shoved. Game 1, which was 2 weeks ago today. More of a game where you guys have the great moment with Juan Yepez, and then obviously what happens in the 9th. It's 2 weeks. Do you kind of replay that in your head? Are there any decisions you would have done different, or is it kind of you like the process, you didn't love the results? Like when you look at some of those moves in Game 1, do you think any differently now, 2 weeks later?
Yes and no, and feel free to ask me more specifics, and I let Jim do it because
Well, how about Quintana first?
All right, we'll start there. I would do that one exactly the same. There's an argument, there always will be, and I'm all ears and welcome the conversation of, well, he's looking real good. Eye test says let him go back out there. Well, there's a reason Hoskins and Realmuto are hitting 2-3 instead of Harper hitting 3, and they bump them down to 4 because they want to see that at bat the third time through. And in my opinion, was he motoring through that lineup? Absolutely. Does he have the ability to get those guys out? Yeah, he does. Hoskins absolutely throttles lefties, and Realmuto missed hitting the ball a mile by just by an inch. So when I look at those 2 at-bats coming back around, you gain an advantage by allowing him to face Schwarber, and that worked out well. And then you gain an advantage by going right on Hicks on those 2 guys, and that worked out as well. So could he have faced them? Yes. Is he going to face anybody past Harper? The answer is absolutely not. I don't care what you say. So our pen has been really good all year, and we tapped into him, and at the end of the day, we were in the 9th with a 2-run lead with 1 out and nobody on. So I can argue that one all day, but as far as Quintana, I would do that the same. Jim, what's your next question?
Well, I actually got this from Tyler. You did this. Say hi to Oli.
Say hi to Oli, Tyler.
Hello.
Hello.
So Helsley comes into the game. Obviously, you guys had vetted the finger, which, he had jammed on the ground, getting a line drive. So you vetted him. He's fine. He comes in with a couple outs. Looks like Helsley, right? Looks like Helsley.
Yeah.
Throws 100. Looks like he's got his break and stuff. No concerns, no red flags. Then things went south. At that point, looking back at it, would you, in hindsight is always 20/20, had someone ready to go in the pen, or are you just trusting in the guy who's been maybe the best reliever in baseball all season long?
Have somebody in the pen going when he went out for the night?
Just having someone ready to go just in case something went south. That was Tyler's question.
Well,
He's blaming his
he
son.
goes out there. We've talked about it all year. The one thing that you'll hear constantly around that clubhouse is honesty, and that's in all areas. If you're going to hear some things you don't like, because people are going to be honest with you, and they're going to be honest with me. And when it comes to injuries, same thing. Can you go? If you say yes, we're going to treat you as if you're full go. And the reality is, he said he was full go. So would we have gone to the pen that early if we didn't think he was full go? The answer is no. He went out there, to your point, in the 8th and threw 100 and spun it and got his outs, and then went back out there in the 9th and got an out, had Harper in a 1-2 count after a soft single to left field off the end of the bat by Realmuto. He had Harper in a 1-2 count, and then where he lost it was Castellanos. And Yachty went out there one time. Mad Dog went out there, and no mention of the finger being an issue. If you look back at Hicks and Gio, both of them were very erratic compared to their normal outings. The reason Hicks didn't go back out there to get another out or two was because he couldn't find it the way he normally would. Gio didn't have a good grip on the baseball. So you're going out there, and if he's saying his finger's not hurting, yeah, I'm counting on my all-star closer to figure out a way to get out. And at that point, he didn't. If there's one thing I would have done different, it would have been the bomb at that. I would have taken him out after Castellanos instead of letting him face bomb. But, yeah, if we're questioning the result, that's one thing. If we're questioning the reasoning or logic, I'm all ears.
We're talking with Cardinals manager Oli Marmol, and I think our listeners really appreciate you going through all these decisions and explaining yourself. And you did this as well after the game. I think this one is probably a little more difficult for everyone to understand, but the defensive alignment that you discussed post-game in the ninth inning, where how you have to decide where you're going to have your infielders depth-wise. Can you explain that to folks as well?
Yeah, you have a guy in Segura. Let's back up and go wide Jack or between Jack and Palante. He hits bomb. You have Jack ready. You have Palante ready, and you're trying to figure out what gives me. You have one out. What gives me my best option? So both guys got up for different reasons. If there's one out compared to two outs, and what they bring to the table in those type of scenarios. You have Jack who you can go to, and I hear the argument as to why it should have been Jack instead of a rookie in Palante, the experience. I get it, but the reality there is Palante, the ground ball guy. Segura is one of the highest ground ball guys in all of baseball. He does not punch out. So regardless of how good your stuff is, it's hard to punch this guy out. I mean, look at the ball he put in playoff Palante. Jack in 2019, when he was striking out 35% of righties, faced him three times, got to pop out to first, a ground ball to short, and the line out to left field. So even when Jack was punching out righties left and right, it was tough to punch Segura out. So there's a high probability. I bet my house on it and Jim's house on it that Segura's going to hit a ground ball. And he does. Now let's talk about the alignment. Segura's a guy that's going to, no different than Marte. And we saw it a lot when he was in Pittsburgh. When he gets to two strikes, he's going to just put it in play, jailbreak, just kind of run, and it's hard to double him off. So at that point, you have your infield in a position where if it's hit soft, you can go to the plate with it, and if it's hit hard, you turn a double play. It's a double play type of alignment, and you're about 3 to 4 feet further in than normal, just in case, so you're not caught in the middle where you can't get that guy at the plate if it's hit soft enough where it's not double play ball. We've done it all year. We've gotten out of a lot of innings with Palante specifically with that. If you look at, we did it in Cincinnati. We've done it so many times this year where it's worked. So again, all we're doing here is questioning the result, not the reasoning. And yeah, I would do it again.
So, one of the things I think that impresses Cardinal fans about you is when you're asked about these things, you don't get mad or you talk about transparency with your players. I think you have that with yourself too, which I think all of us appreciate. Now, when the camera isn't rolling and there aren't live microphones around, you're not as nice to me personally, but that's for another show. I wanted to. We really appreciate you. I think all the media does. The fact that you're accessible and you're fair about things. But I wanted to ask you what your main takeaway was from this season. Obviously, there was a lot of winning. There were, records broken along the way. You had pieces of history, and you guys kind of stayed on point, even with what could have been distractions with the stuff with Albert and Yachty and Waino. When you look back on the season that was outside, I'm sure you wanted to go deeper. What was your main takeaway, Oli?
Gosh, that's a great question. One that I'm still kind of digesting. Is that you celebrating, Jim?
Yeah, it wasn't that good of a question. Come on.
You do this for a living.
It's just a question.
You do this for a living.
Unbelievable.
Isn't it?
But, man, there's a lot of memorable moments from this year. From the chasing the 325 to Albert and the 700 to the type of years our corners had. There's so much that went on that could have easily been a distraction. So there's something to that. that speaks to the culture and the character of the guys that were chasing it, that they never made it about themselves. That was special in itself. If there's a takeaway up to this point, for me personally, is that honesty plays. It's easier to manage your staff and players when you're transparent and honest in every situation. It just makes it easier. You don't have to cover things up. It is what it is. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I think about you. Here's what you think about me. And then we just keep moving. When it comes to playing time and just anything. So I feel like the one thing going into it that I wanted to bring to the table was honesty. And I feel like it played well with our staff and players, and to your point, including the media.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because looking forward, it's too early to assess who's back, what you have. I think one of the things that became apparent is, to me, amazing that Albert, was a dominant bat in the second half, and obviously he's not back. There are other decisions that have to be made along the way. When you look at what you have coming back, and I know it's a process, what do you look at right now as areas where you would like to build up a little bit?
Gosh, this is a great conversation that we'll continue to have between Mo and our front office and myself. But there's some areas that we know we can get better at. Obviously, we're losing a really good catcher. That's important. The DH for us was very successful in Albert. So there's another area. And then the conversation will also lead to that shortstop position, what that looks like, because we're really counting on the young being able to bounce back this year, and it's going to be important for him to take this offseason and see what he brings to the table. But there's going to have to be some meaningful adjustments there for him to see the field. So there's some areas where we know we need to look at, and it'll be fun figuring out what makes the most sense.
And Oli, if you go back to when you got the managing job with the Cardinals, and obviously you're already here, but when you kind of in your wildest dreams, you're a player. Obviously, you transitioned to coaching and wanting to be a manager. Did you ever think it would happen this quickly? Did you think you'd have to wait till you're maybe 45, 50 years old? There are younger managers and head coaches in other sports, but to be doing this job at your age, does it still kind of shock you or surprise you?
Man, honestly, I never think about it, and I know that's probably like, yeah, right. You have to think about it, but I don't. Outside of answering the question whenever I'm asked, I never consider my age, and I attribute that and give credit to. I had a lot of good people around me coming up through the system that taught me what it looked like to build trust and lead and manage a game, but also manage personalities and some of these guys and their egos and what it looks like to maintain a clubhouse. And I have, when I say a lot of good people around me, both in the baseball world and outside of the baseball world, that expedited that track for me. But at the same time, I think of it this way. If you are prepared daily and you're communicating clearly and you're bringing value to each one of those guys in that clubhouse, then I don't care how old you are, they're going to respect you. I can be 70, and if I'm not prepared and I'm not communicating clearly and I'm not bringing any value to them, they don't give a damn how old I am. They're not going to respect me. So it comes down to the value that you're bringing to that individual in that clubhouse, and age is out the window.
Yeah, I think that was very impressive because let's be honest. I know you say you don't think about age, but when you have Hall of Fame type players in an Albert, Yachty, Waino, and guys that are older than the manager, I think that could maybe in other clubhouses cause issues. It really didn't seem to whatsoever. So, what do you think about those guys and yourself that allowed everything to be so seamless in the first year?
No, it's definitely a good test out the gate. I'll tell you that. For the people that you just named, but also the careers that they've had, and they've had very successful managers that have done it right. So there was an element of preparation to make sure that I wasn't missing, but it speaks more to their character than anything on my end, because they never made it about I'm older than you or I have more experience at the big league level than you. It speaks to their character more so than the job I did, because they would have had every right to take that stance and make me prove myself. But the reality is it was a team effort. There was respect there out the gate. They understood my position and theirs, and we worked accordingly. So it speaks to those guys. You're talking about some high character dudes that have a ton of respect for the game, but also for the way this organization is operated, and they put me in that position and they respected it. So I'm thankful for it.
You know, you're a husband, a dad, you got a couple of youngsters, and first-year manager, and I've seen the pressure of that job when things aren't going well. It can eat guys up. I watched you, even when things were not going well, you kind of stayed the same guy. How do you manage to pull that off?
I mean, when you look at it, I want to word this right so it doesn't come across flippant, but you prepare in a certain way, and this job will never, and I mean this, will never take precedence over my family. I don't care how hard it gets, or if fans are coming after me because of it'll never take. You get one shot to be a husband and to be a father to my two little ones, and that's always going to be the most important thing to me. And you prepare in a certain way where at the end of the day I have no regrets. I mean, I'm not going to get out prepared. Our staff isn't going to get out prepared, and we're going to make decisions that are thoughtful. And if they don't work, they don't work. Do you beat yourself up over it? Yes. And that's the thing. Like, we're going to hold ourselves accountable way more than the outside is ever going to hold us accountable. When you talk about the Helsley move or the Quintana move or the defensive alignment, we're going to beat ourselves up, and we're going to beat the decision up to make sure it was the right one way more than anybody on the outside is ever going to even imagine. So the scrutiny that you get from the outside is what it is. That's part of being a fan, and it's part of being the manager. You're supposed to get ripped. That is the gig. Like, that's what makes it fun, is the accountability of doing it well and being celebrated or not and getting ripped. And you welcome that. As a fan, I've done it, right? So, like, I expect that. It's part of fandom. It's getting so passionate about winning every game that you want it. I mean, you want it that bad. You're supposed to second guess. You're supposed to hate me when things don't work out, and that's just part of the gig. But if you think I'm going to let that affect me, that's where you're mistaken.
All right, I got the toughest question of the interview here because you said you got kids. I got a 4.5-year-old daughter. I have a 1+-year-old son, and I don't want to say forced, but I'm dressing up like a triceratops. Our whole family, we're all dinosaurs. So I'm wondering, Oli Marmol, are they forcing you to dress up for Halloween, and if so, what?
No, I've never dressed up. They will, and but no, my wife and I just kind of walk them around and do our thing. But I've never had to dress up, so I'm thankful for that. But I will not be in a costume.
Before we let you go, and I think it's gone well. Like, I haven't destroyed the interview like I normally do. I wanted to ask you about.
There's still time, Jim.
Yeah, there's still time. Versus Interactive, which is something you put together, which is unlike anything else I've ever heard of or seen. It's a way for people to sort of learn from greats in sports, like literally the best of the best. And it's interactive because these folks have done extensive pre-recorded interviews, and you get to ask your own questions of Albert or Ozzie Smith. I can't explain it well. Can you explain to folks what it is and how they can access it?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question. But my wife and I have been working on this is probably year 9 now. And at the end of the day, I said it earlier, I had a lot of good people around me, both in baseball and outside of baseball in the business world, that taught me a lot and really sped this up for me as far as getting to where I got to. And what we wanted to do was create a platform that allowed the next generation of youth and just aspiring athletes and individuals that are high achievers the ability to glean information from some of the top athletes in the world. So it's a platform where each one of our athletes, and we have about 23 or 25 now, do about an hour and a half course of how they became who they became, both on the skill acquisition side, but also on the mentality and overall emotional IQ and what it takes to sustain success at the highest level. But we have this proprietary technology and conversational AI that allows you to ask questions and receive answers no different than Siri or Alexa, where you're sitting there with Albert and you say, "Hey, Albert, did you ever have any doubts? coming up through the minor leagues, and I'll answer you. You can ask Jimmy Finch a question. You can ask Adam Wainwright, hey, show me how to throw a curveball. You can ask Ozzie about the 1982 World Series. You could go down the list. But all of these athletes answer about 500 different questions, so it allows you to really interact with them in a way that's kind of like a self-learning type of environment. But at the end of the day, we wanted to provide the next generation the ability to glean information from the top athletes out there, and so far it's going well.
It's an app versus interactive. You could access it that way. Are there other ways to access it?
No, you download the app. It's Versus Interactive, the App Store, the Google Store, and or the website versus.co, and it gives you kind of the ability to test it out and ask these athletes up to 10 different questions as a test, and then experience some of the trailers of what the courses are like, and then if we convince you, then you can purchase and move forward.
It sounds amazing. I've looked at it. It's a very cool thing. Ollie, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I hope we didn't our show isn't good, but I think collectively the show makes me better than I normally am. Is that fair?
No, I couldn't agree more with that. The better people you can put around you, Jim, the better off you're going to be in life.
Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
for coming on.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care, boys.
All right,
Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks, Ollie.
And you got to love, he said we should rip him.
Yeah, no,
said
he's
we should
cool.
rip him.
He's totally cool.
You got to
I like
love
him.
that.
I like
That's good
how
stuff.
he answered all the questions.
Good explanations.
Yeah,
He answered Tyler's question.
He answered Tyler's. You did better than I did. Good for you, bud. And thank you for coming in, too, by the way.